Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Oh, so beautiful. The heart of the matter. That's what we want to get to, isn't it? In a world that's full of noise and chatter and superficiality, we want to get down to the heart of the matter. Don't we? Don't you feel that calling? And so what will you do with your one wild and precious life? This is the second week of our 2-week series exploring this question that comes from the poem, The Summer Day by Mary Oliver, where she ends the poem with this very provocative question. Tell me, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? So one of my favorite human beings on this earth, who no longer shares the earth with us, but it was my grandpa Bran. And he loved to tell the story that when I was about 6 or 7 years old, I announced to him that I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. And what I wanted to be was a nun and work at Dairy Queen. Now, that was some serious outside-the-box thinking, not just because that's an unusual combination, because as I shared before here, that my family didn't go to church. We weren't particularly religious. I don't even know how I knew nuns were a thing that existed, other than maybe I had seen Sound of Music. Now, Dairy Queen, I was a bit of a subject matter expert on. My grandparents would take us to Dairy Queen often, and I would hold that blizzard and parfait menu upon my heart. I knew that as if it were scripture. So we've all been asked, what do you want to do? What do you want to be throughout our lives? And and maybe we've asked that of ourselves or we're asked by other people, and when we are, the response that's expected, typically, is to come up with some kind of maybe job, a career, a vocation, a role. But what this question, what will you do with your wild and precious life, hints that there's something deeper beyond all these roles, beyond all the ways that you have identified yourself or other people have identified or defined you, ways that both sometimes bolster your opinion of yourself or maybe diminish your opinion of yourself, but there's something deeper than all of that. Because whether you are 8 years old or 80-something years old or beyond, life itself is expressing itself, evolving, unfolding, revealing itself as you, something new every single day. But when we're attached to these roles that we play and define ourselves there, sometimes life might not feel so wild and precious. Sometimes life might feel like an obligation or standards to be lived up to, standards placed upon us by others and sometimes by ourselves. So what I'm sitting with is this, all good questions. What will you do with your wild and precious life? All good questions like this, they lead to more questions. They don't necessarily give us easy answers. They lead to more good questions. And one of the questions I'm sitting with, and I invite you, if this feels right, to take it up for yourself or some version of it. But the question I'm asking myself is, am I bringing my full self, my body, mind, and spirit to life? Am I playing full out? And that question isn't a question we can answer easily too, either, because sometimes we can look in this area, am I withholding something in this area? Am I feeling free to express myself over here, but I'm feeling constricted over here? And sometimes it can be easy to think that life is withholding something from us. But what Eckhart Tolle says, he says, whatever we think life is withholding from us, we are actually withholding from life. And so if we want to experience the fullness of life, we need to meet it. We need to meet it being willing to play full out. And then, the things will happen. When you take this path, you will meander, your path will meander. There'll be detours. There'll be times where you feel like you're driving around in a circle. You're on this path to fulfilling your purpose, to living a meaningful life, to figuring out what you want to do with your wild and precious life. If only it were just a straight arrow and we could take a shortcut and be there. But all of the meanderings, all of the detours, all of the circles that you've driven in, they are not an indication of failure. If you play full out, if you get up and try again, if you bring your whole self to life, then you will succeed. Success is yours. All you have to do is show up fully. And so last week we talked about how our unity principles can support us in living a life of purpose and meaning, and we talked about the first two principles. The first one being that God is absolute good, everywhere present. And if only we could somehow take our human minds and really grok that, we wouldn't need anything else. Because there are no exceptions to that. If we could just stay in the pocket there, stay with that, we wouldn't need anything else. But guess what happens? We live in this world of contradiction and increasing complexities and confusion sometimes and chaos sometimes and comparisons and competitions, all of those things that keep us from feeling, well, maybe God isn't so good all the time. Maybe God isn't so everywhere present. And so when we have this principle and we need some things to support it and help remind us that this is true, we have the second principle that follows on naturally, that if God is good everywhere present, then so must be we. It's the nature of humankind. We must be good too. Because if there's nothing that can be held outside of goodness, God's goodness, then that includes us. How could it not? And yet, the meanderings, the detours, the taking the long way around, they can sometimes tell us that some things are held outside of that. And so what we have now today, we're going to discuss the third, fourth, and fifth principles and how they can support us in coming back home to the truth of this first principle. Meister Eckhart says that God is always at home. It is we who have gone out for a walk. And we go out for walks every time we get into thoughts of separation, every time we get into conflict, every time we think that all there is this thing right in front of me and that we're not able to be open and receptive to a bigger picture. Every time we close our heart, we have gone out for a walk. So how to bring ourselves back home again? So our third principle talks about that we have creative power. We are expressions of the divine, of all creation, and so we inherit creative power. Our thoughts contain creative power. We know this. If you've been coming to Unity for any time, you know that this is kind of our thing, that our thoughts have creative power. And yet, our thoughts and our mind activity are so pervasive that sometimes it can feel, I don't know if this happens for you all, that you can almost feel like a hostage in your own mind. Your thoughts are just running. It can be easy to think that your thoughts are just something that happens to you and you're just along for the ride. You're just a passenger over there gripping the dashboard while your thoughts are just going in circles. So until we can learn to, wait a minute, disengage from we are not our thoughts, but we can direct our thoughts. We can direct our thoughts to create an experience of life that we enjoy, that is peaceful, that is full of joy, that is inspired. We have to be able to observe those thoughts to be able to disengage from them. We have to be able to first know that we are not our thoughts. And to know that the thoughts have creative power, they have power to create beautiful worlds, and they have power to destroy. And whether we're conscious of them or not, they're creating. There was a time back before I found Unity, so you know I wasn't behaving well. That's how you know the story's going to be, I didn't do something right. Back before I found Unity, about 12 years ago, I had a relative that was coming to visit. And this was a relative with whom I disagreed on a wide variety of topics. I don't know if any of you have any relatives like that. You don't have to raise your hands. But this was a relative that fit that category. And I was cleaning my house, preparing for their visit. I was steam cleaning the floor, that poor floor, y'all. I was steam cleaning the heck out of that floor because while I was cleaning the floor, I was also rehearsing all the ways I would respond to these wide variety of topics should they get brought up. Oh, if they say this, I'm going to have this for an answer. Oh, just wait until they do this. I'm going to be able to say this. And I'm just steaming, honey. I'm steaming the floor's steaming, and I'm steaming because I'm rehearsing all these wild conversations, right? Much to my disappointment, none of those conversations even happened. That person showed up, It was a relatively peaceful visit. But what kept it from being all that it could be, what kept me from bringing my whole self to that visit, and I could have had an experience of connection at a deeper level, was that I was back here, still holding those thoughts of, what if this gets brought up? Hasn't yet, but it might. What if this happens? Hasn't yet, but it could. And I had to stay in that protective mode. And here's the thing, when you don't question your thoughts, it never occurred to me, maybe I could think about this differently. My thoughts were, see what this person does to me? See what this person, how they make me react? That was the thought pattern at the time. We can find ourselves getting into that kind of victimness or that surety that if just the other person would change their ways, then I wouldn't have to react in this way. So then cut to a few years later, after I found unity, then I became perfectly practicing these principles ever since. No, that's not true. But I did get a little bit better at it. And then there was another relative with whom I disagreed on a variety of topics that I was going to go visit. I have plenty of these relatives. If you don't have any yourself, I will be happy to let you visit with them. They can come to you, you can go to them, and you can practice your spiritual principles on them. So this time I was going to visit this relative, and I felt some anxiety start to stir up. This was a different kind of situation, but I felt some anxiety start to stir up. What if they ask me about this? What if they ask me about what if this old thing comes back to, the surface? Can I relax? Can I be myself? And at that moment, I saw what was happening, unlike the time with the steam cleaner when I was just abusing that poor floor, honey. I saw what was happening. I saw that I was stirring that anxiety up in my own mind. And it says I took the opportunity to choose, and here's where we get our name, choose a new thought. To choose, how did I want this visit to be? Yes, I can't control what topics get brought up. I can't control the energy or the consciousness of the person I'm going to visit, but I can control mine. I can bring my consciousness in alignment with what I want to experience. And what I wanted to experience was peace and connection. And so I made a commitment that in that visit, whatever got brought up, that I was going to go back within myself and want peace and connection. And I can tell you it unfolded beautifully. Not perfectly to the human eyes, but it unfolded beautifully. Now, here's the thing. If you had asked me when I was steam cleaning that floor and rehearsing my arguments, preparing for war, some might say, if you had asked me, what would you want from this visit? Why aren't you happy right now? What would you want from this visit? I would have said the same thing, peace and connection. That's what I said I wanted. But the way I was directing my thoughts did not match what I was saying I wanted. And what the thoughts did is they had the creative power in that case because I just stayed on that hamster wheel. I didn't know I could get off at the time. And so as we think about our thoughts having creative power in regards to our purpose, one of the limiting beliefs or patterns that can come in is in the name of fear. That's the name of fear. We all have fear. And make no mistake, if you commit to living a life full out, of playing full out, of showing up, there will be frustration. There will be fear. There will even be what looks like on the surface level, failure. And it's okay. It's more than okay, because guess what? Even if you commit to playing small, you're going to still have fear. You're still going to have frustration, and you're still going to have failure. So why not commit to living with an open heart and showing up in all the beauty that you are? Because fear will come in and try to protect us. It's not that fear is bad. It tries to say, if you step out, people might not like that. If you do this, somebody's going to have something to say about this. If you do this, and you let everybody know you're going to do it, then if you fall flat on your face, everybody sees it. That's what fear wants to do, is warn us about these things. And what you can do with fear when it's doing that is just recognize it, thank it for the information, and it will pass away. What we don't want to do is get in the grip of it, because fear wants us to think everything is going to be hard. Don't do that. It's going to be too hard. What if you have to start over again? Oh my gosh, that's just going to be too embarrassing. Things can be easy. And I had a beautiful demonstration of this in my own life earlier this week, as I was preparing for this message. I had about 17 books all around me. I love to do that. That's my happy place. And then there was one more book as I was passing the bookshelf. Oh, 17 is not quite enough. Let me get, no, there weren't really 17, but there were a lot you get. And I said, oh, I haven't read that book in a while. And I know y'all aren't going to be able to really see what I'm holding up, but I want to share with you. It was this book, Diamond in Your Pocket by Gangaji. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this brilliant book. But what I noticed when I picked it up is that there was a piece of paper sticking out of it. I said, I think something might be in that book that would be relevant for this message. But I saw this piece of paper sticking out of it. And it's a piece of paper that was drawn by my youngest son. He knows I love quotes. So when he would read books and find quotes that he thought I would like, he would draw me little pictures and put a quote on it. And this quote was from when he was a teenager, and he was in love with the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And it says, don't give in to your fears. If you do, you won't be able to talk to your heart. And so that's the message in the book. I didn't even have to read the rest of it. That's what I mean by it can be easy. Spirit wants to reveal itself, reveal your blessings, reveal the gifts that are for you and whatever you are doing in an easy way if you are open and receptive to it. So when you're in this creative process, we can create these experiences. We can, by directing our thought in what we want to experience. And maybe you want to experience this particular job over here, or this car, or this house. And that's a beautiful thing. But what happens when you don't get that job, or this house, or that car? Because that happens. That doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. But what happens is when we mistake that form for the fulfillment of whatever we seek to express, there can be a suffering. Because whatever you're really seeking to express through that job, whether it's security or fulfillment or that car, you want freedom, whatever the underlying principles are that you're seeking to express through that particular form, you don't have to have that form to get it. There are a myriad of forms that can bring that into your life. There's a book that Reverend Michael shared a couple years ago in our Spirit Group Touchstone series called Prayers of the Cosmos by Neil Douglas Klotz. And he does a translation from the Aramaic, which is the language that Jesus spoke. And it's a book on the Lord's Prayer and the Beatitudes from that vantage point of Middle Eastern mysticism. And there's a line in the Beatitudes, in our SV version, the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible, it said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." But in this translation from the Aramaic, a closer translation to the language in which it was originally spoken, Neil Douglas Klotz says that it says, "Healed are those who weep for their frustrated desire, for they will see the face of fulfillment in a new form." There are many forms that your fulfillment can take. And though you may have frustrated desires, that is temporary. The fulfillment is guaranteed as long as you keep showing up. And so since our thoughts, though, it maybe sounds easier than it is to just redirect your thought, change your thought, have a new one. You don't like that one? Get a new one. Sounds easy. And yet we need some tools to help us with this. Because these thought patterns, first of all, there's individual thought patterns that have been running and running and running, so they have some momentum. So to completely disengage with them, they're going to still show up sometimes. So we need some tools for when they do. And then we also have our collective unconscious thoughts of separation, all the otherisms. And so we encounter those out in our culture too. So we need tools to bring us back to the truth. And so the fourth unity principle talks about these tools, a couple of the tools that we can use to align our consciousness back with the truth of our being, with the truth of oneness, with all life and with one another. And the first one is affirmative prayer. Many of you are familiar with how unity holds prayer. And we could do a whole message on this, but I'll simply say this, that when you come to the God of your being in prayer, the way we hold it is that God of your being sees you already whole, perfect, and complete. Again, it's already at home. It's you that's gone out for a walk. So whatever prayer request that you bring, we don't bring it in guilt or smallness or beggingness. We bring it with we know that actually we stand in the truth that we are already whole, perfect, and complete, and the wholeness of God is revealing itself right now. It is merely when we have gone off for a walk and latched on to some idea of separation, latched on to some idea of insufficiency or lack, and we take the activity of prayer to bring ourselves back into the alignment with the oneness of our being. And so when we do this, we don't have to do the proper 5-step unity prayer. We can. It's a beautiful thing. Meister Eckhart said that if the only prayer you ever said in your whole life was thank you, it would be enough. And so we don't have to wait until things go sideways to come into prayer. We can wake up every morning with a prayer of thanksgiving, with a prayer of directing our thoughts. How do I want my day to be? And who do I have to be for my day to be like this? Often my prayer when I wake up is, help me stay awake, and not stay awake because I want to snooze on the alarm. But my prayer is, I want to stay awake today. Whoever comes in my path, whatever comes in my path, whatever experience, let me be an open-hearted receptacle for this. Let me hold it with love and compassion. And I see myself doing this, and so it is. Prayer can just be a thank you. Because a thank you on the surface level, we say it all the time, but it has a deep spiritual truth to it. Gratitude for just being. Not a transactional gratitude. I'm grateful today because of this. That's beautiful too. But there's a gratitude that emanates from the depths of your soul when you are in the awareness and alignment with the source of your being. So prayer is an activity. And the way I hold meditation, and people will have a million different definitions for meditation. There's apps, there's accessories, there's books, there's mantras, there's all kinds of ways to meditate. The way I hold meditation is that prayer is an activity where I seek to align my consciousness back with the oneness of my being. In meditation, I cease all activity. For me, the meditation, an invitation into meditation is be still and know. All I have to do is be. I had a lovely meditation teacher when I first learned to meditate. Well, I first learned to meditate on my own when I was living in Singapore, and I would go to one of the city parks there, and there'd just be bustling, people having conversations, and I would sit on this bench underneath these trees and just have a very blissful experience, because underneath all the noise and the conversations and the people walking, I could sense this depth of stillness. It's under there all the time. Even as I speak now, you might be able to feel that in your own beingness. The stillness that is you, the spaciousness that is you, gazing back at me. This is your true identity in the absolute realm. There's nothing for you to do to create it. You are it. And so this meditation teacher, he would tell us, don't get too wrapped up on things being perfectly quiet for your meditation. Don't get too wrapped up. You want the candle, you want the incense. I was like, yes, I do. I want all of that stuff. Oh, I want a comfy chair too. I want all of it. He says, go into the noisiest place you can find and meditate. Sit outside, and if the dog is barking, have a barking dog meditation. Wake up, and if your partner's snoring, have a snoring meditation. That's not my favorite, I can tell you that. But all you have to do is come home. And this can be, and there are two things I would like to say about meditation too, is one, that's very personal. Very personal, how you do it. Some people do it 20 minutes a day, first thing when they wake up, some at night, some go out in the park and do it. Find your way. Some it's a 1 minute a day. Bring one conscious breath is a meditation. So how you do it is very personal between you and the God of your being. You don't have to do it the way anybody else tells you to do it. But then the other piece of that is I do believe it's non-negotiable. I believe it's non-negotiable that if you want to live full out and fully express who you have come here to be, then you need some time in the stillness. You need some time where your being is being informed by the stillness, by the wisdom of spirit, rather than all the stuff that's happening out here and all the stuff that's going on in here. Because maybe your minds are different, but mine isn't always full of wisdom. It's full of stuff, but I wouldn't call it wisdom. So we must come back home into that refreshment, that renewal, that place of deep rest that is meditation. And so these are the three really principles, and then the tools. The fourth ones are tools that we use to bring ourselves back into, our consciousness back into, I should say. We're never out of alignment, our consciousness is. We bring it back. And so the fifth one is simply, we live the truth we know. It's not good enough to just know these things. And trust me, I would love to just know these things. I'd love to sit surrounded by my books all the time, sit in meditation and just bask in spirit, bask in that feeling of oneness. And yet, we're all here to show up. We're all here to bring about the evolving consciousness in the world, a healing consciousness. So this fifth principle says that we gotta show up. Rob Bell says it like this. He says that the universal needs a particular, because without a particular, it just remains in the abstract. And what he means by that is you can take universal truth of joy, of beauty, of goodness, love, whatever it is that you associate with the one that is the one, all those beautiful universal truths that we could just sit around and talk about all day, all the things we love and value, inclusivity, openness. And unless you express it, where is it? Where is it? It's not enough. As much as I love coming to church and, I love those praise songs and dancing around. It's not enough to just come here on a Sunday and just feel it and love it. That's beautiful. What I know is I have to go out and be it. Reverend Michael talks about this vision of this community being a welcoming island in Houston. And man, when he talks about that, I light up. I resonate with that this place is poised to be a welcoming island for all people. And yet, if I'm not welcoming to all people when they show up, and if I'm not investigating what that actually means to be a welcoming person, a welcoming community, it doesn't happen on accident. So I want to close today with a quote from American novelist Toni Morrison. She says that if you find a book that you really want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. So this is the idea. If there's something you want to see out here, something you want to see more of, something you see missing, something you want to see changed, then you be that. That is your soul calling you to be that in a unique, precious, wild way that only you can do. And what I love about being in spiritual community is it takes the best of all of us, individuals expressing ourselves in unique ways. And then the collective, the sum is greater, the total is greater than the sum of its parts. Something happens that we expand. And so I'd like to take us into prayer with an invitation this week for you to ask yourselves the question, am I bringing my full body, mind, and soul to my wild and precious life? And if there are any place with me that feels that I cannot do so, can I just let go of that? Can I bring myself back into the awareness that I am here to express that which I wish to see? and that I do not lack anything to do so. Otherwise, I wouldn't have that desire in the first place. So right here in this now moment, what I know and affirm is that each one of us here today, watching online, we are here to live a fully wild and precious life. We are here to express the fullness of spirit in our own unique and beautiful ways, and that anything that tells us otherwise, anything that tells us, no, you can't do that, you're too young, you're too old, whatever the made-up limitations that the mind has to offer, I just say thank you, you've been heard, you can go now. And what I see us is welcoming with an open heart, with a receptivity and a willingness to play full out, that miracles happen, that ways are made that we didn't think there was going to be a way. Synchronicities abound, abundance abounds, and the presence of God is here. And so it is. Amen. Thank you all so much for playing full out by being here today. And I just want you to know I honor and bless you all in all the ways you express your one wild and precious life. I bless you in that. You are the light of the world. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.